Hi, everyone. Before we begin today, Minister James is going to speak for a moment.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We'll get to the formal part in a minute, but I just wanted to say I understand that there was a technical challenge and an issue around one of the slides as well. We had certainly planned to make sure that you had the documents a good 30 minutes ahead of time. That's why we had arranged everything the way we had. So I'm really sorry that didn't work out, but that's why we moved everything to 2 o'clock, so to give you the half an hour to make sure that you got all the documents and make sure you had all the time to look at them. So I'm sorry it didn't start off smoothly, but I promise it gets better.
And with that, we'll go to the Premier for the announcement.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks, Carol. I want to acknowledge, first of all, we're at Phillips Brewery in Greater Victoria, the riding of the Finance Minister, and also a place that a guy from Langford frequents on occasion. We're also, of course, on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. As British Columbians, we've been through a lot. 6 months ago, the unthinkable happened. COVID-19 changed not just our world, but the world. Together, we faced an unprecedented situation, a near global shutdown that has had consequences and ramifications on every corner of the planet. The scale of the challenge was larger than anyone could have imagined. Working closely with Dr. Henry and her team, we took dramatic steps to keep people safe. British Columbians did their part. People stayed home, schools and businesses closed their doors. These actions were unprecedented and were warranted, and lives have been saved as a result of the sacrifices made by British Columbians. As recent numbers have reminded us, we are far from out of the woods, and it's time to double down on our efforts to protect ourselves, our families, and others. We need to continue washing our hands. We need to continue physical distancing, and we need to maintain that distance, and if we can't, we need to wear a mask. As a government, we acted immediately to protect people and their livelihoods. We came together and marshaled historic resources like the BC Emergency Workers Benefit, supports for renters, as well as extending disability pensions for vulnerable people in our communities. And we kept British Columbia running by maintaining supply chains so there was food on the table, and continuing to build BC by keeping as many people working as was safely possible. We also, of course, kept childcare facilities open for those frontline workers who wanted to ensure before they went into harm's way that their children were safe. These steps were possible thanks to the incredible amount of work done by all British Columbians. So where do we go from here? There was no government that had a playbook for how to deal with a global pandemic. And when you're building a plan for people, you have to talk to them. This plan is built on extensive consultation with individuals, groups, and communities. The pandemic continues to challenge us in unprecedented ways, but fundamental priorities remain the same. We need to protect people's health, we need to keep the economy open safely, and we need to support communities. For example, last week, we announced a new program to give thousands of people opportunity to retrain and start careers as healthcare aides. And this is one example of how protecting people's health can go hand in hand with keeping the economy going and creating new jobs that will sustain families. This, of course, reminds us also that people are the economy. In order for us to move forward, we need to do that together. Today, Minister James and I are here to take you on the next step of our recovery journey, the latest response to the pandemic here in British Columbia. Our recovery plan has 4 main priorities, and it starts with strengthening our healthcare system. Last week, Minister Dix and I announced that the Fall Pandemic Preparedness Plan included a whole host of new initiatives, particularly focusing on keeping people well and putting more people into the system. It started by hiring more contact tracers so that we can address COVID-19 head on and make sure that we keep people safe. We're hiring more healthcare workers, and we started a new innovation called Hospital at Home so that we can ensure that people are not staying in hospital but are getting home as best as they can, getting the care they need right where they're comfortable. It also builds on our primary care network plan, which has been going on for the past 3 years. The more services, health services we can provide for people in their community, the safer they will be. And we're building acute care facilities across the province in Surrey, Richmond, Fort St. James, Terrace, and more. The second part of the plan, of course, is about creating good jobs and new opportunities. We're investing in targeted short-term training to connect more people to in-demand jobs. Building up communities, of course, is also central to that plan. A new $100 million community infrastructure plan will get shovels in the ground as quickly as possible so we can kickstart our economy and keep people working. The third component involves helping businesses grow and rehire. Our plan introduces a new tax credit that encourages businesses to hire more people or increase salaries for those that they've kept on staff. And a new recovery grant for small businesses and medium-sized businesses will ensure that they have the financial lifeline they need to get through this pandemic. And it will also protect 200,000 jobs in the process. There's also a new PST rebate for some equipment and machinery so that companies can build and grow by making investments that will also help stimulate activity across the economy. Strong communities, as I said, are fundamental to our success, and what we've been doing is trying to amplify local needs at the national level. I want to take a moment to thank the federal government for their partnership, not just with British Columbia, but provinces and territories that make up this great country of ours. Hundreds of millions of dollars will be coming to British Columbia for the safe restart that will help us ensure that we're recovering in a way that makes differences in every community across the province. The Safe Restart funds will help us address local challenges that have been made worse by COVID-19, and it will help us deliver the services that people count on. A strong transit system is foundational to our recovery. Over $1 billion of provincial and federal money will help us keep people moving, whether you use BC Transit, TransLink, or BC Ferries. Historic times call for an historic response. We have followed through on our commitments to protect people and health and their livelihoods going forward, and we will continue to do so. Our recovery, of course, will not happen overnight. There's a long road ahead of us, and it will require a constant opportunity for us to adapt and innovate to changing circumstances. We are not alone. We are joined in this global pandemic by 7 billion souls around the globe, and British Columbians can lead the way in so many different ways. This economic recovery plan starts us down that path. But we do have a plan in place that will create opportunity and a brighter future for many, many British Columbians that are looking at a bleak fall and an uncertain winter. This will harness our core strengths, and it will focus our eye firmly on fixing the challenges ahead and building a resilient, sustainable economy. I want to be clear that this recovery plan is just the start, the first step on the long road of recovery that we will take together. We'll continue to invest wherever and whenever we need to keep our economy growing and keep people safe. And now I'll ask Minister James to go into some of the details of the economic recovery plan.
Thank you so much, Premier, and thanks everyone who's joining us virtually today. I'm grateful to be speaking on the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations and thank them for the ability to meet on their land. Today is an important day in the road to economic recovery for British Columbia. BC's Economic Recovery Plan, A Stronger BC, is a plan that puts the values of British Columbians at the centre. Those of equity, reconciliation, and taking steps together towards a stronger, more resilient economy. A truly strong economy should work for everyone. That's what we focused on since we became government, and now more than ever, we know that's what will help us move forward as a province. Stronger BC in many ways mirrors the public health response to COVID-19. When I practice safe physical distancing, when I wash my hands, when I wear a mask, when I stay home when I'm unwell, I'm protecting my health as well as the health of all British Columbians. We approached BC's Economic Recovery Plan in much the same way. When someone loses their job because of COVID-19, it affects them and their families. They have less money to spend in their community, and in turn, local businesses suffer and begin to order less frequently from their suppliers. Local stores may have to lay off staff or close their doors entirely, and the negative effects continue to cascade through the economy. But if we take care of ourselves, if we wash our hands, if we stay home when we're sick, we're keeping others healthy and we're able to safely participate in the community and in the economy. We are truly all in this together. This plan is one of the ways that we can ensure that people, businesses, and communities are all supported as we move forward together, because it's in all of our interests to make sure that people who lost work due to COVID-19 get the supports and training for future opportunities, just as we all have an interest in helping businesses to create jobs. A growing economy offers potential benefits to everyone. This recovery plan outlines bold actions to protect the health and livelihoods of all British Columbians. It represents a $1.5 billion investment in the future of our province. But to people, to businesses, to local communities that are still struggling, it means much more than that. And just as the Premier was being very clear, I want to be clear as well. This is not the end of our work. Full economic recovery will take time. This plan is an immediate next step with long-term goals in mind. The next steps, which will be introduced in Budget 2021, will move us closer to a stronger and more resilient British Columbia. It'll continue the work that we started before the pandemic and the work we've done since. While our overarching economic plan may have changed since February's budget, the foundation remains the same. We are investing in people. We're investing in good jobs, strong supports, and healthy businesses and communities. We're investing in a cleaner, more sustainable economic future for our province through Clean BC and more clean tech jobs. We're investing in continued reconciliation to ensure that First Nations and all British Columbians can prosper and grow. The future of BC is one where the benefits of strong economic growth are felt equally, one where meaningful action on climate change and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is built into everything we do. In order to get there, we need to act now. Fundamentally, BC's economic recovery plan is focused on security for all British Columbians. These measures will protect your health and your future, because it should not be a choice between protecting your health and protecting jobs. These two things aren't in competition with each other. In fact, they're closely linked. Public health measures aren't an impediment to economic recovery. It's the other way around. Public health measures are the tools we're using to open the economy safely and steadily. If people don't feel safe, they will be reluctant to shop in stores or go to work. As the Premier said, Stronger BC is built on 4 main priorities: making healthcare better, getting people back to work, helping businesses hire and grow, and supporting strong communities. Our first priority, the foundation of all our work, is a strong public healthcare system. As I've said, a resilient economy requires healthy people, healthy families, and healthy communities. People need to feel safe to participate in their communities, and by putting the health of British Columbians at the foundation of our response and our economic recovery plan, we can focus on a safe restart for the economy. This isn't a new concept for our government. Investments in better healthcare have always been integral to our work. We started building a better healthcare system with faster access to improved healthcare services well before the pandemic, and this is more important than ever before. The investments in this plan mean 7,000 new frontline healthcare jobs in British Columbia. For someone who's lost their job during this pandemic, this means new opportunities for sustainable and meaningful employment in the healthcare sector. The government's priority of expansion of healthcare infrastructure is also more important than ever, and we're creating better access to healthcare in fast-growing communities throughout the province. For the parent of a sick child, this means a new primary care centre and less waiting times for healthcare supports. Our second priority is good jobs and new opportunities for British Columbians. As you know, COVID has changed the way we work and live in British Columbia, and this year brought a sudden and unexpected loss of income to thousands of households. We worked quickly to provide supports for the people who lost their jobs, so they didn't have to face difficulties like paying their rent or buying groceries all by themselves. Now we're focused on ensuring that people affected by COVID-19 can find a way to new employment opportunities, skills training, and work experience. This plan includes creating thousands of new jobs in the fields of the future, like clean tech, frontline healthcare services, and new opportunities for young forestry workers. It means providing short-term training for 2,800 people in high-demand fields, like community services or childcare. And it means increasing skills training programs in Indigenous communities with $15 million to help with upgrading skills and accessing new opportunities. For a high school graduate, this could mean skills training towards a career in clean tech through the new Centre for Innovation and Clean Growth, or perhaps a successful and long-term future in a healthcare career. Stronger BC also means an additional $46 million to enhance health and safety in our childcare programs. For a parent unsure about going back to work, this means they have the peace of mind when they drop their child off in the morning. Our third priority is to help businesses hire and grow. For businesses throughout our province, the uncertainty of the last 6 months has been difficult. While some have reopened, we're not back to the pre-pandemic levels of unemployment or economic growth. We acted quickly to create supports for businesses when COVID-19 hit, and now we're bringing in new supports to move these businesses forward. We're directly supporting businesses in hard-hit industries with the small and medium-sized business recovery grant that the Premier mentioned. This grant is going to help businesses establish a path forward and thrive in the long term. Stronger BC means that a local store owner can learn new ways to promote themselves through digital marketing and e-commerce to move their sales ahead. It means a small tourist operator, hard hit by record low tourism this year, can get help paying the bills now and establish a business plan for a sustainable future. And as the Premier also mentioned, the new increased employment incentive will encourage businesses to increase wages or hire new staff. A new temporary PST rebate on select machinery and equipment will help businesses invest and grow. And we're also going to push forward with promotions and encourage British Columbians to buy and support local businesses so that people throughout British Columbia know how they can help their local communities. And finally, our fourth priority is to continue to support stronger communities in BC. BC's local governments have been on the ground, supporting people in their communities. Our government will ensure that local governments have the resources they need to keep their communities resilient and safe. In partnership with the federal government, we're providing hundreds of millions of dollars in Safe Start refunding for local governments. So for a local government that's struggling to support people experiencing homelessness in their communities, this could mean access to provincial funding to develop a plan that focuses on the needs of vulnerable populations. More details on that funding is going to come out in the following days as we sit down with municipal leaders to discuss their unique needs and priorities at the Union of BC Municipalities meeting done virtually this year next week. We're also continuing to invest in transit services to get people where they're going safely and quickly, and of course capital infrastructure projects that are going to build stronger communities. This could take the shape of an updated road to a remote community. Right away, this project will provide short-term employment for people, but in the long term, it provides the community with a safer and more reliable road access to healthcare, to education, to essential services, and to economic opportunity. We're also investing more than $45 million to keep kids and teachers safe by hiring more custodians, adding more hand-washing stations, providing more personal protective equipment. And this is in addition to the $242 million in federal funding for a safe restart. We entered COVID-19 as an economic leader in Canada. We acted quickly to create one of the most supportive and comprehensive action plans in the country for people. Our plan promotes BC products, makes rural and remote communities more accessible by road and air, improves broadband access, trains workers to fill high-demand jobs now and into the future. These significant investments will reinforce other ongoing investments we continue to make. Everything from infrastructure projects roads, bridges, affordable housing, schools, and hospitals. We have always understood that the economic strength of our province lies in good jobs, strong supports, strong services, and strong health care. Before the pandemic, our government was making progress towards an affordable, accessible, quality childcare system. And what has the pandemic done? It's reminded us how critical that infrastructure is, every bit as critical as roads and transit. So our commitment to expanding childcare in BC remains stronger than ever. By taking the necessary actions now, we're going to come back from COVID better prepared and stronger. And together, we're going to build BC back better. Thanks so much. Look forward to your questions.
A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to get in the queue. You're limited to one question and one follow-up today. Our first question is from Binder Sajan. Go ahead, Binder.
Hi there. Just looking at these measures that are announced today, the increased employment incentive, you can apply for it to the tax credit in March 2021. The PSP is a rebate. I'm unsure about when small and medium businesses can apply for this recovery grant. What we have heard from a lot of people, a lot of small business owners, is they really need to free up cash. What is new in this plan that is going to help them do that?
Let me take it.
Yeah.
Thanks. In fact, we looked through when we did the work, and as you know, we've been working on this over the summer. We've done the work that was necessary to go through Cabinet, to go through Treasury Board, and I want to say a huge thank you to the hundreds of people, thousands of people who in fact wrote in and offered their ideas. These are all new programs. Some of them, as you know, have been announced just in the last week, but this is all new spending, all been approved now, and so ready to go out the door. So everything from the municipal grants, which will go out right away. People can start planning. Businesses can start planning for the two new tax breaks that they can get. There are a number of the grant programs that can go out the door right away. So we made sure as we developed this plan that there were opportunities to be able to support businesses and communities and jobs immediately.
Do you have a follow-up, Binder?
Yes, and so just in terms of the tourism plan, the industry had asked for a lot more money than what seems to be in this document. Can you tell us about why that decision was made? Because it's quite far, I think, from what they were asking for.
Well, as you can imagine, there were requests from every group, I think probably in British Columbia, around resources. But we know how critical tourism is. Both the Premier and I, of course, I represent Victoria. The Premier is also in the region, know firsthand the challenges facing the tourism industry. But we also know that this is a long-term issue that is going to have to be addressed. So we have put supports in place in tourism for, one, a task force, as the tourism industry requested, to bring together leaders to look at both short-term and long-term plans. Tourist operators also requested that they see grants, not another loan. Many of them have applied for loan programs through the federal government. They've asked for a grant program. We've got that in place. The small business grant program will apply to tourism and in fact has a top-up. So tourist operators in fact will get a top-up of $10,000 on those grants. And then we're also providing supports for marketing, for businesses themselves, both from a provincial point of view, regional point of view, and then local communities. So there are opportunity for local communities hard hit by the tourism drop to be able to actually apply for grants to look at how they both expand tourism opportunities, but how they also improve the kind of infrastructure they have in their communities. So it's a very comprehensive approach and more to come. Because of the work that the task force is going to do, we will have a chance to build things into Budget 2021 as well.
Our next question is from Richard Zussman.
Premier, can this be seen as a blueprint for your platform for the next provincial election?
Well, what we've been able to do here is to put in place an unprecedented amount of resources for people, for businesses, and for communities between provincial budgets. And that speaks to the unprecedented nature of the time we're living in. As Minister James said, we worked very hard to listen to stakeholders across the board. We established an economic recovery task force so we could get current information from business leaders and communities across British Columbia, and we put in place, we believe, a pretty robust package, again, working with the federal government, finding places to fill gaps in federal programs and creating programs of our own. But this is just the beginning. We have much, much more work to do, And as Carol said, between budgets, to have this amount of money brought forward, ratified by the legislature, and then as we've done over the past number of weeks, gone step by step through each program, through the Treasury Board, so that the public service, the professional public service of British Columbia, who will be delivering these services and programs for people, for businesses, and for communities, have the authority to get out and get going. And that's been our priority, and that's what we're going to focus on, not just today, but tomorrow, next month, and the month after that.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
Yeah, is this a plan that will win you an election?
I've not made a decision about an election. I've been working on, as I said, the difficult decisions of the trade-offs that are involved in making sure that we expend public resources in a way that's responsible for the taxpayer, but also meets the extraordinary demand in communities, whether it be revitalizing our health care, where, of course, a key part of our economy is the well-being of people, and a sense of comfort and assurance that when they go into the marketplace to conduct their business or to participate in the economy, that they can do so safely. That's been our preoccupation, quite frankly, and I think that this plan meets that test for today. And as I said, the pandemic is just beginning. I know that people would like to hear something different, but we're just starting a very long journey that we have to take together.
Our next question is from Justine Hunter.
This money was approved at a time in March when all parties were agreeing to work together cooperatively. Now you've got your opposition concerned that you're going to turn this into an election platform. Can you say that this will be implemented without the distraction of an election campaign?
Absolutely. In response to the last question, I think I was pretty clear. Why we put the extra effort in is that so many times, and I've been involved in government for a long time, so many times governments make an announcement with money to follow. We know that we are in extraordinary times. We know that British Columbians want answers to the challenges ahead, and they want to do it by making sure that their government's focusing on people, on businesses, and on communities. And so these dollars are approved. The increase in the budget was ratified in the legislature, and the Treasury Board, which keeps tabs on government spending in the interests of the public, has gone through every chapter, every page of this document. The monies are approved, ratified, and they're going to be going out the door as quickly as possible.
Do you have a follow-up, Justine?
Yeah, just want to be clear then, does that mean that your finance minister, your education minister, your health minister will not be distracted from the job of rolling this out in the coming months?
Well, and I apologize, Justine, I didn't hear completely your question. Maybe if I could just ask you to repeat it.
Sure. Is there too much activity at the brewery there, maybe? Can you say then clearly that your health minister, your education minister, your finance minister will not be pulled off of the job of implementing this in the coming weeks and months in order to go on an election campaign?
I've got you. The job of implementing this has been done. Now it's up to the professional public service. It's up to municipalities to work. Their chief administrative officers will be working with professional public service members here in Victoria and across BC to deliver these programs and services. It was critically important to us that this not be a dribs and drabs, which I've seen, quite frankly, not being critical of my colleagues in other provinces, but bits and pieces. We knew we had the time, we knew we had the resources, we wanted to make sure they were approved and ready to go out the door, so it wasn't a series of announcements that would be followed by decision-making inside of government. Minister Dixon and I announced a significant chunk of the health spending because we wanted to make sure that people knew that help was on the way, whether it be the important work of finding 500 and now 600 contact tracers so that we can do the good work of allowing our public health officials to contain outbreaks of COVID-19 when they appear, but also to give hope that there are jobs for the thousands of people who have been displaced, many of them in the hospitality sector, to transition from that sector into public health and the delivery of services for people. This is exciting opportunities for those who were not seeing any opportunities a few weeks ago. And these dollars are approved, the decisions have been ratified, and now it's about implementation, and that is always involving the public service and involving those officials and those businesses that make applications. The applications will be ratified and go out the door.
The next question is from Rob Shaw.
Oh, hi. Just to follow up on that, there's a lot of discussion from both of you that this money is ready to go out the door. The civil servants are going to administer it. But one of the centerpiece amounts, the $300 million grant program, has a requirement in it that businesses demonstrate they can provide a viable path forward to stay open. And we just spent some time with your ministry officials asking what that means, and they don't have any idea. That it hasn't been developed yet. So can you talk a bit about that? How is this major program with money supposedly going out the door contain requirements that haven't been identified yet for businesses to actually apply for?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Rob, and thanks for the question. And this is one of the key pieces of the plan, is the opportunity, as I said, for businesses to get grants. We've heard a lot about the federal government loan programs, and businesses are very appreciative of those, but they're really looking for a grant. There are a couple of pieces that are in place for small businesses. They have to fit the criteria, and the criteria, of course, is a small business, a small and medium enterprise, 2 employees to 149 employees. They need to show that they've had a drop in business since COVID of 50%, and they'll be able to show that. They have an opportunity. There'll be a team within the Ministry of Jobs and Skills. There'll be a team there who will assist them to be able to get their applications in. That's going to take, as the Premier has said, some time, as it always does, but not a long period of time. The one thing we heard clearly from people in the recommendations that came forward is we understand there has to be due diligence. We need to make sure the dollars are spent wisely, but don't make it overly complex. Make sure that we have an opportunity to get our information into you and move ahead, and that's exactly what will happen with this program, and those criteria, those pieces are in place.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, Premier, none of us are particularly thrilled with continuing to ask you questions about an election, but you just said you've not made a decision about one. So can you tell us when you are planning to make that decision? Elections BC has this big chart out with tables and times and dates. Everyone's waiting for you to come up with either saying this is happening or not. So can you tell us when that's going to happen so we can stop asking you about it?
Well, I'd like to help you, Rob. I have not made a decision. I'm focused on making sure that we can launch our recovery plan, Stronger BC, so that British Columbians have confidence that we're focused on their needs. The economy is about people. People need to know that their government's working to ensure that they're safe and doing what we can to protect their jobs and grow the economy, to get back to the place we were in February when we were leading the country in economic growth, lowest unemployment in the country. We are in a good place here in British Columbia, but that's cold comfort to people who are looking to put food on the table. People are looking to meet their mortgage or rent payments in the months ahead. We were wanting to make sure we got this billions of dollars out the door, and that's what my focus has been, and that's why I'm here today.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda.
Premier, I'm just hoping that maybe you can dumb it down for those of us like me. And just, people were sort of waiting for a bells and whistles, big bombshell sort of announcement of what this $1.5 billion was. And it just looks like it's building on not just pandemic programs, the programs your government had in place long before the pandemic, childcare, primary care sites. So I'm just wondering, when people look at this, if you had to boil it down, what are they getting for their $1.5 billion that wasn't already on the table before?
Well, I'd like to think that I'm not about bells and whistles. I'm about getting the job done and working hard for British Columbians. And these programs, numerous programs, never existed before. We've created them from the ground up. We've collaborated with business, with labor, with not-for-profits, with Indigenous communities on our Clean BC plan. And you're absolutely right. We're building on the foundation we put in place. As Carol said, were it not for our strategic investments and our commitment to childcare, we would not be ahead of the curve when it comes to making sure, during the height of the first stages of the pandemic, that we had childcare facilities open so that frontline workers could go to work and put their lives on the line and risk their well-being, knowing that their children were safe. So obviously we've built on the foundation of the work we've done over the past 3 and some years. But some of these initiatives are brand new. A strategic investment fund that's designed to make sure that British Columbians become equity participants in the tech sector so that we're not just giving grants or giving loans, but we're saying we're looking at best business practices. Where can we stimulate more activity, allowing small startups to scale up by being participants in that sector? These are unprecedented moves by the government of British Columbia. They took some time to work out, but it was a back and forth with industry leaders, a back and forth with the people that work in sectors that allowed us to put this in place. And I apologize if it's not shiny and sparkly, but it is a massive amount of work that's focused on lifting up people, supporting businesses, and ensuring the communities that we live in have the resources that they need.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
I do. Coming after months of consultation on this $1.5 billion, and there are some task forces already in place regarding tourism, I'm guessing there's going to be some frustration with people in that industry hearing that there's a task force to decide what's going to happen next. So perhaps you can talk to that that industry that's struggling, and you've talked about how it's struggling, hearing that there's now a task force that's going to look at next steps when they want something now.
No, I appreciate that. And as Carol said, both of us grew up here in Victoria. I used to work on the Coho Ferry. It hasn't run for the past 6 months. Prior to that, it had 60 years of uninterrupted service between Washington State and Vancouver Island. So I know intimately the impact that a global pandemic has had on our tourism industry. But I also know that the overwhelming number of British Columbians, including those that work in the tourism industry, understand that until other jurisdictions around the world get their act together and collectively the world can lift these travel restrictions and, in our case, hard border restrictions, particularly to the south of us, there's going to be a deep, deep impact on the tourism industry. So that's why we tried to promote as much internal activity as possible this summer. We'll be doing that through the winter for the ski industry and other recreation activities that can be done on the land during the winter. We've got marketing dollars in place to start building and trying to not lose that market share that existed before the pandemic. And of course, we've got grants in place and a task force so that the industry can collectively work on the solutions that we all need so we can open up our economy again and particularly get that tourism sector going. But I don't think there's a person in British Columbia that doesn't understand that when you say we're not going to let people from away come here, there's going to be an impact on our economy, particularly our tourism economy.
Hey, Premier, I think it's important to note that the task force, in fact, has a $50 million fund to be able to spend on their initial recommendations. So yes, they can look long-term, but they actually have a $50 million fund that they will be able to utilize immediately. There's $19 million for small municipalities who want to look at adapting and diversifying their tourist infrastructure. So that, again, is dollars that will go out immediately. $14 million for tourism initiatives across the region, and then $20 million for tourism infrastructure projects. So there will be amenities in communities that have not seen large tourism happen this year. It's a perfect time for them to look at renewing some of their infrastructure in communities, and $20 million will be going to that. And then the last piece, of course, is the $300 million small and medium business loan program with a top-up for tourism businesses who, in fact, can get an additional $10,000 as part of their grant program, not a loan, a grant program to be able to support those businesses as well.
We only have time for one more questioner today, and that will be from Rob Buffum.
Oh, hi. Thanks for this. You've talked about, and you've answered, both of you, I guess, questions about tourism and the fact that the industry asked for $680 million and they're only getting about $100 million, but there's only so much pie to go around. If you had to identify one industry or one area where you wish you had given more, what would that be?
Well, I don't think, in fact, it's about more money. It's about making sure that we've got the right programs in place for economic recovery so that all British Columbians can benefit from the plan. And so, as the Premier has said, as I have said, this is simply one piece of economic recovery. Our budget 21-22 will be about economic recovery. And so I believe there'll be pieces that we'll find out as we go along are very successful. Perhaps we'll want to expand them. Perhaps we'll want to look at putting a new piece in place or an additional piece that gets added to the program. We have the ability to do that both through the budget and through the process. We've built our COVID plan on flexibility and responsiveness and meeting the needs of people and businesses, and that's not going to change.
And I would just add, as we've said, this is a between budget infusion of billions of dollars. We have much more work to do through the fall and into budget 2021 that will focus on all of those initiatives. And again, the task force will help inform that. The Standing Committee on Finance, which travels, of course, this year doing most of it virtually, gets input from British Columbians, from businesses. Where do we want to focus our efforts in the next budget? And that work begins today.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
I do, and it relates to the tourism industry. In the same harbor as the Coho Ferry is Prince of Wales whale watching, and I know that they were hoping for more money. They're upset that they're not getting more, and they're probably one of many businesses in the tourism industry that are upset. I know there's the $300 million for small and medium businesses as well that adds to the $100 million. But what would you say to these industries, or businesses, some of which may not make it through the winter because they're not getting enough support in the tourism industry?
Well, I would say that we have been working with the federal government since the beginning of the pandemic to try and fill gaps. I refer back to my response to the notion of not enough people coming to Vancouver Island, to British Columbia, to enjoy the extraordinary vistas, the attractions, the destinations. That's been a critical challenge, not just for whale watching in our community, but for attractions and destinations across British Columbia. This is tough times for that sector. We put in place programs that will help get them through the next short while, and we'll continue to work with them through the task force to make sure that we've got Budget 2021 locked down to continue to assist until we can find a time where we can welcome people from around the world to come back to British Columbia, enjoy the many attractions and destinations that we have here.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have.
Thank you.
Thanks.